Hello again, avid vino fans. My name is Roland Zimmermann and welcome to our YouTube channel Uncorked, and I'm here to talk to you today about sparkling wine and how it's made. Today I'm going to cover what is it, how is it made, and what types of grapes are usually used, and the differences of sparkling wines around the world, as well as the different types of sweetnesses that can be present in a sparkling wine. First off, what is it? Sparkling wine is any wine that has carbon dioxide left in it at the time of packaging. Now, this can be done in a number of different ways, and I'll get to that in a second, but for those of you that still aren't quite sure as to what I'm talking about, it's the bubbles, like in a drink like Coca-Cola or a Pepsi, that is present at the time of packaging when the wine gets put into a bottle. So, how is the product actually made? There are two methods that are used to make sparkling wine throughout the world. There is the traditional method, and there is the Charmant method. The traditional method basically involves taking the grape juice fresh off the vine, or freshly pressed grape juice, fermenting it like a regular wine, whether that's red, white, or rosé, and then after the fermentation, that first fermentation has finished, cleaning it up, making sure it's clear, then putting it into a bottle with more sugar and more yeast and capping the bottle, which essentially traps the yeast and sugar, and then also the CO2, which forms the bubbles, in the bottle. The second method, the Charmant method, is actually the same as the first method, the traditional method that I just explained. The big difference is that it's a much larger vessel. So the wineries all over the world take the same basic wine, and instead of putting it in bottles, they throw it into a big stainless steel tank. They add the yeast, they add the sugar, and they close all the valves, all the openings on the tank to make sure that the CO2 stays inside the liquid or inside the wine during the fermentation. Of course, part of the reason for the production of this much larger vessel component, or this different method, the Charmant method, was because one of the challenges that traditional method sparkling wines face is that uniformity in the bottle is different. And let's be honest, consumers, when you try a wine, you expect it to taste the same as it did 6 months ago, as it did a year ago, as it will in 6 months from now. So this is how the industry was able to provide this for the consumers. Whereas with bottle fermentation, you get a lot of variability because each bottle is a unique product all on its own, and you never know exactly what you're going to get until you get it to the consumer. What types of grapes can be used for sparkling wine? Well, there's a couple of factors, and I won't get into the actual technical making of the sparkling wine and the grapes that are best suited to it, but traditionally and essentially over time, what has developed are certain varieties are best suited. Number one that everybody has probably heard of, Chardonnay. Number two, Pinot Noir. Number three would be Pinot Meunier, and also Riesling is definitely one of the grapes for sparkling wine production. Part of the reason why these grapes are chosen is because of their beauty in their aroma that can be produced in these sparkling wines. You can also use some very aromatic grape varieties in the sparkling, but they tend to sometimes not really show as well. And this is partially because of the secondary fermentation, because that secondary fermentation really does have the sort of lasting flavor impact on the sparkling wine. So your choice of yeast and your choice of wine as a base is actually extremely important to produce a phenomenally, exceptionally sparkling and tasty product. Sparkling wines across the world actually are known by many different names. Probably the one that everybody has heard of is called champagne. Now, to quickly allay anybody's concerns here, champagne actually can only come from a very specific geographical region in France, which is why outside of French champagne, and it says champagne on the label, you will never see the word champagne used anywhere else. The consortium of champagne producers has done a phenomenal job of marketing this product across the world, and marketers all over the world can definitely take a few plays out of their playbook. Now, obviously, not to be outdone, the Italians also have a sparkling wine industry. In Italian, the sparkling wine isn't called sparkling wine, it's called spumante. And spumante is the catch-all phrase for the different types of sparkling wine that the Italians have. The Italians have, again, not just spumante, but they have prosecco, and then they also have a frizzante. The reason why there are these different classes of sparkling wine relates to the atmospheres of pressure, or bar, which I mentioned earlier. Obviously, as the higher you go, the more bubbles are perceived to be in the product. Hence why in Italian they call those spumante, and the cutoff is at about 4 atmospheres or 4 bar of pressure. The next one down would be prosecco, and that tends to be between 4 and 2 atmospheres of pressure. And then the final one is the frizzante, which can be anywhere from 2 to 0.5 atmospheres of pressure. In North America, we don't have a specific grading system yet for our sparkling wines, hence why sparkling wines can be anything from 6 atmospheres of pressure, the high end, all the way down to 0.5 or atmospheres of pressure. I should also mention that, and many people are not aware of this, that Germany also has a very large sparkling wine industry. Only they call their product Sekt. S-E-K-T. And they do have the distinction and the leveling similar to the Italians. I'm not going to get into all those technical terms at this point in time, but it's the same principle as the Italians had developed many years ago. Final point to sparkling is the sweetness. Now, in Ontario specifically, we have regulations which stipulate what we can put on the label in terms of what the sweetness of the wine is. So it goes from driest all the way to sweetest, but unfortunately it's not simply the term dry to sweet. There's actually a term called brut. Brut refers to anything that is less than 15 grams of sugar, residual sugar, in the final product. And then it goes extra dry, then it goes dry, then it goes medium, and then it goes sweet. And I appreciate that that's not necessarily intuitive, but because sparkling wines are something extra special, we do ask the consumer to kind of work with us to make sure that it stays as a special product. Well, that's all I have for you today. I thank you for watching. Please subscribe below, give us your likes, and provide us with any comments. We would love to hear from you. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.